I think in midlife, this thing happens where we have to reconcile the way how we thought our life would go with the way it's actually gone. And so there are like these three selves in conversation. There's you at 25, and then there's who the 25-year-old you thought you'd become by 45 or 50. And then there's the person you actually did become.
Right.
And some of that is connected to the choices that we make, and some of it's connected to the way the world changes. So I think all three of those selves are coming to the table to have a conversation in this movie.
Hello and welcome to Your Creative Midlife. I'm Betsy Bush. I am so happy to have with me today Brooke Berman. She's a playwright, screenwriter, author, and most recently the filmmaker who produced and directed her own film called Ramona in Midlife. And how nice that she has brought with her the trailer, which we're going to screen right now.
Dear Patty Smith, I think someone has stolen my life.
I know who you are.
I'm Kiki's mom. Our kids are friends.
You're that Ramona. What Ramona?
What Ramona? Ramona, middle-aged, but still dresses like a rock chick. Used to be a writer, now works in an animal shelter. This is a real movie in production?
Do you know about the Monsbach movie? Of course I know about the Monsbach movie. Everybody knows about the Monsbach movie.
I just told him you were a mom at school. And maybe I told him I think of you as a cautionary tale for women artists, but that's it. What? Just like how you were a really big deal and then disappeared.
I didn't disappear. Look, I think this project is based on my work, and I think this character is based on me. What do I do?
Brooke, thank you so much for being here. I loved Ramona, and I want to also mention that it's available on most streaming services.
It's available on most streaming services. The biggest one is Apple. Amazon. It's available on Amazon and Apple and Tubi and a bunch of other ones. And it's available for live screenings through a platform called Kinema, Kinema.
Right.
And we're doing a screening in Greenpoint, Brooklyn on April 26th.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you should come.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to. This film really touched a chord with me because I think there are a lot of people who, like Ramona, had a lot of success early in life. She wrote a book that was very big, and then a second book didn't do quite as well, and then she started concentrating on raising a daughter and finding a job that paid her. And I think a lot of people maybe identify with this early success, but then life goes on and your priorities change perhaps. But what was so interesting with Ramona is there's kind of this, this myth around her that she's disappeared. And as she keeps saying to her friends, I'm right here, right? And I have to say, the actress Yvonne Wood is wonderful in that role. All the actors
I love
are
Yvonne
good.
so much.
Did
Yvonne Woods went to Juilliard with me, and I've been
Oh.
writing for her for probably 30 years. I just think she's extraordinary.
She was perfect in that role, as were all the actors, but I she was great for Ramona. I'm wondering, where did that idea come from? And how does it connect to the world of the artists that you are around so much? Is this something that happens where people feel like I can't take the struggle anymore and I need to set aside my artistic ambitions and concentrate on other things?
Well, the idea came from a couple of different places. I find with the best projects, there are 3 or 4 things that happen at the same time. And it's the collision of those things that make the project. And I will also add that I've been thinking quite a bit about the reason why Ramona is an essayist is that there was a particular moment about 20 years ago in the early aughts, where there were like these girl essayists in the vein of Joan Didion. And there was the idea that you could, as a smart young woman, come to New York and write these smart, pithy essays and have a literary career. And I was so interested. There was a book review in last weekend's New York Times book review. It was Jennifer, I don't know if her name is Weiner or Weiner, but Jennifer Weiner reviewing an Anna Quindlen book. And
I was thinking of Anna Quindlen.
Yeah, well, Jennifer points out that in this new book, the kind of writer that the character in the book is doesn't exist anymore. And the way in which that character earns a living doesn't exist anymore. And that is also true for the essayist of any gender, but in particular, the women got hit really hard. So, you know, at the time that I was building my playwriting career, there were these extraordinary women writing books of essays, Megan Daum and Sloane Crosley. And, you know, I think that particular path financially got harder to maintain. And at some point, if you wanted to keep writing, you had to figure out what the marketplace was doing. And my character, Ramona, is having a bit of a tantrum. She's, you know, I think in midlife, this thing happens where we have to reconcile the way how we thought our life would go with the way it's actually gone. And so there are like these three selves in conversation. There's you at 25, and then there's who the 25-year-old you thought you'd become by 45 or 50. And then there's the person you actually did become.
Right.
And some of that is connected to the choices that we make. And some of it's connected to the way the world changes. You know, I mean, in my field in entertainment, television jobs are down by, I read a stat last night that was like 40%. I mean, it's crazy. So some of the things that don't quite pan out the way you thought are just because like Santa Claus isn't real, Virginia. Like
It's not your
Santa
fault.
Claus just isn't real.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not your
and
fault.
then some of it are choices you make. And, you know, there was also that great essay when around the time I had my son, there was an essay, I want to say it was in the Atlantic, but you'll remember it. It was a woman who had worked in government who said, the second wave feminists lied to us. We can't have it all. Do you remember that essay?
It sounds familiar, yeah.
And she basically was saying we have to make choices. We have to prioritize. So I think all three of those selves are coming to the table to have a conversation in this movie. And when Ramona doesn't get the life she thought she was going to have, I think she's having a bit of a tantrum. And, you know, and so her friend Imani says, you don't like to be in the game. You'd rather sit on the sidelines than be in the game and get hurt. And I think that's very, very real for that character. And she has to, I think like three different characters say to her, this is just what happens. It's not personal.
Right, right.
So it's the ability to really, I think, be messy in public that's kind of helpful.
Yeah. Or maybe she had it was easy for her to get that first book published.
Yes.
And then to have to keep trying and deal with the rejection is harder for her because it was easy for her at the very beginning.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I went to Juilliard. So, you know, the notable examples at Juilliard were Val Kilmer, who came out the gate and was a star. Or then somebody like Michael Chernus, who, you know, is a star now, but didn't work for a couple years. Before that happened, he had to grow into the person who could then play Jeffrey Dahmer or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, and those are not the only two paths available to artists. It's not like hit it big and then have to reinvent yourself or reinvent yourself and then hit it big. There are other people who've woven those two paths together. But I think it's certainly worth noting.
Tell me about your playwriting career and your screenwriting career. I mean, this must hit home a lot because you've had plays that, you know, where someone shows interest, but then, or screenplays where people show
both. I've had both.
Yeah. And then it never quite gels or once it's out of your hands, things don't necessarily come together through no fault of your own or through the material.
Yeah, I've been very, very lucky. I've had both. I've had plays that have done quite well. I had a play at the Humana Festival when I was 30. I had a play at Steppenwolf, which was a real dream for me because I was a Chicago girl. I had a play at Primary Stages that turned into that memoir that you read. So I've done quite well as a playwright. And I've also had heartbreak. I had a play that I put my heart and soul and blood into that I optioned to a Broadway producer. And then in 2016, she just disappeared. I mean, mean, I didn't even get a phone call saying we're not doing it. It was like she was gone.
Wow.
Or I've had plays I've developed for, particular people and then they don't happen. Or movies. I mean, it is more often that movies don't get made than that they do. Mm-hmm. Getting a movie made's like The Mists of Avalon, you got like you remember in the book The Mists of Avalon, like the moon has to line up between the clouds at just the right moment so that, that's what getting a movie is made, the conventional way, which is why I made Ramona on my own terms.
Mm-hmm. Talk about that. I want to hear, how did you make Ramona on your own terms?
Well, I'd been in development with another movie for 6 years, and when the pandemic hit, it was pretty clear to me that probably wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is that any independent film that doesn't have a studio attached, which makes it independent, that has a budget over $1 million needs a movie star in order to secure financing. Mm-hmm. So the old model was that you go get the biggest movie star you can, and then with your big movie star, you go to financiers and you say, this movie will make its money back because we have the person you want to see. Mm-hmm. And so I was determined to do it the opposite way. I cast my friends. I called up Yvonne Woods and I said, I'm writing you a movie. And I called up April Mathis and I called up Alicia Reiner and I said, please come be in my movie. And they all said yes, because these in fact were long-standing creative alliances. And so we put it together like a play. I had them, and then I found my crew. I found my DP and editor, and then I hired a producing partner who was really awesome and savvy and great, to get the movie on its feet. And then we hired business affairs to do all the contracts, and we went out and raised the money. And then, when investors said, well, why don't you have a movie star? I could say to them, because I have these extraordinary theater actors who are going to show up and work for scale, because we put it together on very little money.
Yeah.
And then I got all the locations donated, except for maybe 3. I think we paid for 3 locations. The actors shopped in their closets, so we didn't have a lot of money for costumes. We had great hair and makeup artists who I recommend every chance I get. Uh-huh. There was a particular musical artist I wanted, and I wrote to her, and she said yes. And so I really put it together like, like Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, like, right. Let's do a show.
Let's do a show.
I have this and you have that, and we can use my barn.
Right.
My dad will make brownies.
I hear that, and I realize someone who's been in a more standard career, who's like always wanted to make a movie. Maybe they went to film school early on and then got into a business, whatever. It's like, now's my chance to make a movie. But now I hear like you're pulling in all of these chits that you're bringing in friends who you've worked with over years and years, and how much those relationships really help you bring something like this together. How would someone who doesn't have those relationships do it?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's a really good one.
Yeah.
So I think the first step is to have a story you want to tell. There's no making a movie without a story. So you have to know what story you're telling. It could be a documentary. If it's a narrative feature film or even a narrative short, I'm a big fan of short films, you have to write it. Mm-hmm. So that's step number 1. Get a script that you love and feel really strong about. And then I think you make a list of the resources you do have. So for instance, my resource, the thing that I feel really good about, is relationships with actors. I came of age in the theater. I was an actor. I wrote plays for actors. I trained at an acting school. When I started working in film, the whole time I lived in LA, my community are mostly actors. Mm-hmm. So that's something I bring to the table. Yeah. But the things I know nothing about, I went and learned about. And then I think we try to find partners who can bring in the piece that we don't have. So I think it's about, maybe you don't have a lot of industry relationships, but maybe you have a movie about, I don't know, what would you make a movie about? Give me an example.
Oh, what would I do?
Yeah.
Probably I would love to do something mysterious, maybe a ghost story, a haunted house.
Great, a ghost story. So let's say that you have a great love of ghost stories and you've spent 20 years studying ghost stories, and maybe you even have like a little
personal example.
Sure. But my point is that maybe you know people in the field of, I don't know what ghostology is called, but there's
paranormal activity.
Yeah. And then you bring those people to the table. You bring the paranormal expert to set. And maybe you know someone. I had a friend who was an Alexander teacher, and she offered to come in and just work on my actors. She came and gave Yvonne like Alexander sessions. Or the caterer on my film is a woman who lives in my apartment building. So there was a Queens-based female-owned caterer, Diana Manalong of Little Chef, Little Kitchen, who is my neighbor and who said to me, I'm looking to get into catering film sets. Do you know anyone? And I said, yes, come to my film set. Or, when Kristen and I were raising money, we went to my college, to Barnard College, to the Barnard Entrepreneurs Network, BNet, and they put out an APB for us. We were looking for investors, but we found people who donated products to our film. Oh. And so I could also then say to Diana, I've got all this chocolate from Guittard Chocolates in San Francisco. Could you do something with them? And then we had cookies on set.
Nice.
So cookies are really important when you're paying people scale. But my point is that even if you don't have the industry relationships, you do have a network and you do have an infrastructure from the thing that you're really good at. And then you find a partner who has the thing you're not good at.
I love that. That's a little roadmap, I think, for folks. I just want to touch on your memoir that you wrote that came out in 2010, No Place Like Home, a memoir in 39 apartments. What was that like starting out? Just out of Juilliard, I think.
No,
right?
just out of Barnard.
Just out of Barnard. Did you go
back
to Juilliard
school.
for? Oh, okay.
No, I started at
tell me
Barnard.
About that. Okay.
And then I left to study with Anne Bogart, who's an experimental theater director. I don't even know if we call her experimental anymore. She like runs the program at Columbia. I think she's like a master theater director. I went off to study with Anne, and then I came back to New York at 21 without any real idea of how to make a life.
Okay.
And so that's really where the book starts.
Interesting. And
Juilliard was about 7 years later. I went to Juilliard at 28. 27 or 28, I think.
Just to give a previous podcast episode a plug, I have a great episode with the Dean of Juilliard Extension, who's now John Morgan Bush. And in the extension program, half of the students are 65 plus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Juilliard was really significant to me because my mother had been a concert pianist when I was a child. And part of my mother's backstory was that she had gotten a scholarship to study at Juilliard when she was 17 and she didn't go. And I think she always regretted it. And it felt like a life not lived, like and she was a bit of a Ramona. I mean, now that I think of it, I never thought about that before, but she was incredibly successful as a pianist and then married my dad and bought really nice clothes and had a baby and got divorced and had to go back to work and sort of reinvented herself in her 30s. She was a publicist in Detroit. But Juilliard was always mythic to me.
Sure, it is.
Yeah.
There was something about the storyline of couch surfing or going from one apartment to the next, trying to make it as an artist, because I think a lot of my listeners to this podcast are people who chose the other path.
Yeah.
The safer path, the more financially secure path. And maybe now we're like thinking the path not taken, and wondering, gee, can I really get street cred as an artist? I haven't suffered the way, early people in their 20s have, suffered in the instability or the moving from one place to another, or having that experience that you have in your 20s when you're making connections with other artists in your same situation, and maybe the insights you get into life at at a point like that where there is some instability or you're scrambling or whatever. There's the school of hard knocks, I guess. Do the folks who are coming from, say, a more stable background, is it possible to really find an artistic path?
Of course it is.
That's not kind of sentimental or whatever.
I think it's always possible to find an artistic path, 100%. The artistic path doesn't play that way. Like, it's not like you're worthy and you're not. I wish I had known to go look at it, but I actually have a file at home, an analog paper, like file folder full of articles that I've saved of artists who essentially come into their own after 40 and sometimes after 50. And, I love Louise Bourgeois, who continued to exhibit her work. I mean, the playwright Adrienne Kennedy had her Broadway debut in her 90s, 80s or 90s, it was 2 years ago.
Okay.
She's extraordinary. She taught at Harvard for many years. And then she finally had a play on Broadway. Yeah. I think the most important thing is your ability to access what's true. But the universe doesn't pick and choose. Look, the industry is ageism. The art industry is full of ageism. But your creative path doesn't have to be. I think it's absolutely possible to pick up from any point.
Yeah, I think with writing, you need to go through a lot of drafts, and there's a lot of time commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
No. And that's
not age reliant. 25-year-olds need to go through as many drafts as 55-year-olds.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe at a 55 or even 65, you're thinking, is this where I want to spend my time if I have to go through so many drafts to maybe get something acceptable? I'm kind of wondering how people, feel about that. Although,
well, how else do you want to spend your time?
Yeah.
Because then the question is, are you trying to write something because you want the identity of being a writer, or you like to write, or because you genuinely love to write and you have something to say? Because if you love to write and you're exploring this unexpressed path that's been inside you all of these years, how better to spend your time? Like, once the draft is done and you turn it into a publisher, it's not yours anymore. It's gone. Once you turn a screenplay in and, a company buys it or a director takes it, they can do whatever they want to it. Plays are different because playwrights maintain copyright. So, but even then, the work becomes not yours. It becomes collective. So if there's a story you're yearning to tell, or if there's an artistic journey you want to go on, I don't know. My husband's dad became a painter very late in life. And I teach writers right now. I have a coaching business, and I have a wonderful, wonderful client I've never asked her how old she is, so I wouldn't venture to guess. But she had a successful career as an architect and raised 2 children and has been writing a memoir for the last year or two. And it's really good.
Yeah.
But I think at that point, once we get past 50, we're probably not proving ourselves to the world anymore. We're doing it for ourselves. And do all the drafts, because that's where you're going to get to the truth of what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. I've asked so many of my guests, what is your measure of success? And most of them have said just being able to do this means I'm successful. To even I have an attorney friend who's been writing 1-act plays that have been produced in workshop. And he's like, this is incredible for me. This is amazing. Or I think being able to spend your time and your energy pursuing a particular path, and for people to understand it's a process, it's the process that counts for most people as opposed to a finished product.
I think it's also, for me, the conversation. Like, I was an only child, and I spent most of my life before the age of 17 by myself. So a lot of my childhood make-believe was very solitary. I could not be a novelist. My husband's a writer, and he writes prose, and I watch him, and he sits alone in our room for hours, and he's so happy. He just wants to be alone with the writing, and I don't feel that way. I want to take the writing to a group of actors and have them act it out. For me, it's the thing my 8-year-old self wished. I wished I could have had all the kids in the neighborhood come over and play make-believe. So there's something for me about the the conversation between the story that's in my head and the story that goes on to the bodies.
Where do your ideas come from?
Everywhere. Some of them are from life. Some of them are from visual art. Some of them are from things I hear or overhear. Or some of them are from music. There's a big strain in in Ramona about Patti Smith.
Right.
Because my whole family's from Detroit. And when my son was born, we would take him every August to Detroit to go see my grandma who couldn't travel. So there were invariably periods in the day where we would give my grandma a break and we would take our son in the rental car and we'd go drive around. And I kept thinking about Patti Smith raising her children in St. Clair Shores. And it got a little obsessive, actually. I mean, not in a scary way, but I had met her briefly on my honeymoon. My memoir came out around the same time as Just Kids. We were both staying at the Chateau Marmont. I had gotten married the day before. I was 6 months pregnant and I wasn't sleeping in. And I woke up early and went down to the cafe in the lobby with my journal and my coffee. I'm sitting with my coffee writing in the journal, and right next to me, Patti Smith is sitting with her journal and her coffee. And I was just filled with this, again, because I don't have a mom, I was filled with this need to just reach over and ask her if it would be okay. I wanted somebody like her who had walked down the path of being both an artist and a mother simultaneously to tell me that I could do both. And, of course I didn't. I mean, I think I said hi to her. I did say hi to her. And that was in 2010. And I wrote Ramona in 2022. So that, some of these things have a long, slow burn.
Oh, for sure.
I wrote it in 2020.
Yeah.
But I had pages of writing that somehow found their way into this movie. And I went, oh, this belongs in that movie. So sometimes it's a little like that,
Well, the whole, that angle of her writing those letters to Patti Smith, that's a great book right there, right? If someone wanted to start making a film, what kind of specific training do you think they should have? How might they fill in that blank?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many great communities online. The Sundance Collab has a bunch of online workshops. Film Fatales has a huge library of their online workshops. After I wrote the first draft of Ramona and I realized I was going to make it myself for as little money as humanly possible, I started watching or attending all the Film Fatales webinars on micro budget films and how to fundraise, and how they have a great one with director Catherine Hardwick on how to do prep. And Hardwick talks you through how to prepare.
Wow.
Sundance Collab has one I really like on visual logic. My friend Tessa Blake teaches one for Sundance Collab on directing actors. So there's a whole bunch of different skills. I think you need to learn how to break down a script. You need to learn how to work with actors. You need to learn what the camera does. And because of what the camera does, what you can get away with cutting on the page. Right? Because you have the camera to show it visually. So
you don't need as much expository,
correct.
Whatever.
That's right. And then I would study other films. And I would start with a short. I'd make a short. Yeah. There's a great film community also on Substack right now.
Oh.
I think you asked me what Filmstack was. And it's Filmstack.
Okay.
And at the center of it is this guy who's been an independent producer for many years named Ted Hope. And he has a Substack called Hope for Film. And I subscribed to it years ago. I've been reading every single one every single day. Wow. There's also a series. There used to be a website, I think it's still there, called No Film School. And they also have a podcast. So the resources are plenty and plentiful.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
But there is a lot to learn.
Yes.
When I made my short, I had a good friend, my next door neighbor hooked me up with her best friend who sat me down and taught me what to do.
We're in an age now where the gatekeepers that there used to be, think about publishing, movie studios, film, television, all of those sorts of things, they've kind of faded away.
Yeah.
And technology makes things so inexpensive. It's kind of amazing, right?
Yeah, it is kind of amazing.
You could at least do a proof of concept film on your phone And
yeah, I have to say, I am not a lover of the proof of concept because the proof of concept implies that you're going to pitch it to a gatekeeper. Right? It's in the title. Who are you proving your concept to?
Right.
So if you're going to spend a lot of money, I would not suggest making a proof of concept because unless, you have an in to someone who's a gatekeeper, but even then, why not make a short film and take it to the festival circuit for the same money?
maybe proof of concept to yourself.
Sure.
And maybe close friends whose support you want to make sure you have before you embark on something that really sounds like a very big, complicated deal. How much money do you think someone needs to do like a short film? And short meaning
I made
10
my
minutes,
short
20
on
minutes,
I
or-
made my short on $12,000.
Oh, okay.
You can spend so much more. I mean, shorts can be made from anywhere from $25 to $35,000. Yeah. It really depends on how much you have access to. What we did with our a short film is usually under 11 minutes. Although I met with someone last night who has one that's 20. And that's real. That happens. I saw some great ones on the festival circuit that were well under 10 minutes. They're easier to program if they're shorter. Right. And in film, your budget is dictated by how many days you're shooting because you pay people by the day. Mm-hmm. So a 20-page film is going to be more expensive to make because there are more days on the table than I made my first short. It was 18 pages and we cut it down to 11 minutes and we shot it in 3 days. We got our post-production donated, which is partly why that budget was so low, and all the actors worked for free because they were my friends. So there's that. But Mark Duplass has a great book called Like Brothers, and I think he talks about him and his brother making their first short for $25 on their dad's credit card. So I know it can be done. Yeah. I haven't done that, but it exists for sure.
Right.
I don't think the issue is how much money do I need. I think the issue is, do I have a story to tell, and what's the best form for that story to take? And if that story is a short film, who do I need to partner with to render it? And then you work backwards.
Right.
And how few pages can I tell that story in so that I can do it for as little money as possible? Right. And what do I have access to? I mean, if you have, and frankly, people who went to film school 20 years ago are not better served, because 20 years ago, the charge to most filmmakers was make a big film, make it big. Can you make it bigger? Let's see, make it bigger. When I moved to LA, my Hollywood agents were like, we want you to write something big. And at some point while I was living there, and the films that I loved the most were small. They were writer-directors. They were small films. Yep. So it is important to know what kind of filmmaker you are, but also big is harder to get made now.
Oh, man.
So if you can make a small film, if you have a house in the Jersey Shore, go make a film. You can shoot there, and then you're not paying for locations. It's your space.
Right.
If you have a particular prop that's really meaningful that you can write a story around, you've got that prop. Yeah. If you're a composer and you can make your own music, that's one of your assets.
Yeah.
You know?
It's great. Look around your life and the resources that you may have that you don't appreciate. Friends, maybe family stories. Maybe family stories can be really amazing.
Oh, God, there's this amazing film, Joanna Hogg's film, The Souvenir. I think it's called The Souvenir. It's part 1 and part 2. And it stars Tilda Swinton's daughter. It's about a relationship she had in her 20s. And the real life boyfriend bought her this antique 4-poster bed, and she put the actual bed in the movie, which I just found so moving.
Wow.
There's like a whole essay about the life of the objects in Joanna Hogg's films.
Very cool. Very cool.
She's amazing.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if you know, I went to NYU undergraduate film and TV.
Oh, yes, said.
Yes, okay. Graduated 82, so it was a long time ago.
They were telling you to write big.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
car chases and set pieces and antics.
We had a lot of friends who, you want to have your own student film to show to people. And there were examples of someone spending $50,000 to
in 1982.
which was huge for a student film to rent your own equipment and you'd find actors who would work for free because you might be the next Martin Scorsese, of course. And then, you'd have to have film, and the film would have to be developed, and then you'd have to
But go
rent
see that documentary on Scorsese on Apple TV, because his first films were not that.
Oh.
His early films.
Oh, we saw all of his early films and NYU Film School films because we had, the last year or two, we had his film teacher's beloved film teacher, Hig Manoogian, was still teaching and then passed away sadly at the end of, I think, our sophomore year or something like that. But you would have people who would spend all this money and then never quite got it made.
Yeah.
You couldn't finish it in the time that you had allotted, and the film and the equipment had to go back to the rental company, and your actors disappeared, and you spent $50,000 for basically an unfinished film. It's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I love about coming from the theater is like, I don't actually believe that throwing money at a problem makes it better. I would like to make my next film on a much bigger budget than Ramona because there were things we just didn't have the resources to do. And I certainly wish we'd had more for post. But I don't think that the bigger budget makes the thing happen better. Or I like, especially on a first film, I like having to solve the problems on my own without being able to write an easy check. Oh, we don't write checks anymore, do we? We Zelle.
Right. Well, tell me about your next project. You have 2 in the works, right?
I do. I actually have 3. I have a play and 2 films. I have a play that I've been developing that is a 3-character dark comedy set on the eve of 9/11. But it's actually quite funny. And it's about the relationship between personal tragedy and cultural tragedy and the ways I'm a little obsessed with this thing Rilke says about how sadness is the moment when something new enters, but we don't know what that is yet. So that's what's happening to those characters in that play. And then I have a coming-of-age comedy set at my high school in Northbrook, Illinois. I went to John Hughes's high school, and in 1984, when I was a freshman, he sent the Breakfast Club actors to come observe us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they were not yet famous, so we didn't know who they were except for Emilio Estevez. And then many, many, many years later, I worked with Ali Sheedy, and we sort of talked about that time. And yeah, so I wrote a story about the kids in the drama club.
Oh, that's
the
fun.
year that Hollywood comes to town.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I'm finally going to make this passion project that I've been walking around with for 15 years called Major Minor Details. And it's a movie that I wrote and sold to a big company when I lived in LA. It almost got made a handful of times. I had really great people working with me. And then in 2013, the rights reverted back to me. And that was the year I made my short. And I always knew that once I was solid as a filmmaker, this would be my next project. So I'm in the process of putting that together.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks.
It's so much fun to hear multiple projects and multiple platforms and such a ebullient personality. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I hope everyone tonight, after listening to this, streams Ramona at Midlife.
Go stream Ramona
Go
at
stream
Midlife.
Ramona.
And follow me on Substack. Let me know what you think of the film.
Yeah, I love it. Brooke Berman, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I love your red clogs, by the way.
Thank you. They're Clogmaster.
The Clogmaster. Love it.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, leave a review and a thumbs up. And please share this episode with someone in your life who needs to hear it. We all need to stay creative. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Betsy Bush.